It's been a while since I've had this much fun with a deep dungeon crawling action roguelike or roguelite. If you're familiar with games like Nuclear Throne, you'll recognize the trend of clones trying to replicate that highly difficult, cramped, and tense bullet hell action. One notable example would be Voidigo, Semiworks' previously charming game before its breakout entry into co-op horror with Repo, which is currently blowing up the gaming scene. While many indie games have tried to capture the insane challenge and fast-paced action, very few games in this genre tend to stand out in any truly meaningful way. This is where Odinfall comes in. It offered an amazing experience that, while exciting, still, just like many others, isn't without its flaws. The game is doing everything that it can to stay original while also being the spiritual successor to Nuclear Throne. I believe it's on the right path, but there is still some distance to cover before it fully reaches its full potential, considering it is still in early access. Odinfall boasts a surprisingly well-crafted story that weaves in Norse mythology. The story revolves around the impending Fimbulwinter, the prequel to Ragnarok, which adds an extra layer of challenge, becoming more apparent when you spend too much time exploring the overworld locations that seem rather reminiscent to that of Super Mario World. Here, Loki has been imprisoned by Odin in the futuristic world where humanity was wiped out by their first Ragnarok. In their place, highly advanced clones now roam, catching even Odin off guard as he returns to set the stage for a second Ragnarok. Desperate to prevent this and see Odin fall himself, Loki calls on you for help, as much as he might hate it, to battle bosses and enemies inspired by mythological figures to help him find his body. Currently, the game suffers from some noticeable imbalances and a few crashes here and there that hinder its potential. The issue is not that the game is hard, it's that the game's structure heavily favors a single build type, making other builds feel weak in comparison. Like favoring a reflect melee build early on, while ranged builds are usually better off for the late game hordes. This is a problem of variety. Not all melee weapons will reflect, and not all melee weapons will feel the same. When you start a fresh run, you are immediately met with a progression system that feels restrictive. At first, you have zero access to unlockable skills, hidden weapons, or any progression beyond your basic starting loadout. You're immediately thrust into the action with just a handgun and a limited set of tools. While this does serve as an introduction, it also means that without the necessary upgrades for your skills and also new characters, the game becomes extremely difficult, taking multiple attempts to get anything out of it in the end. Unless you know of a good seed to start from, you'll quickly run into a few problems with managing your resources, like ammo, weapon types, and useful perks that could help you survive and increase difficulty, or take the wrong route to a secret boss that will destroy you effortlessly. One area that this becomes especially apparent is with the tougher enemies and the stages, such as the roly-polies, the pinecone enemies, and the skeleton archers, which unleash overwhelming projectiles. Dealing with these enemies is very frustrating, but with the right gear, you can just reflect them like they're nothing. Once you're able to unlock more features, the game does open up and feels much more manageable, but by that point, you often find yourself having to restart and grind through earlier levels again to level up newer classes and their skills to get a max level of 15. While I found this to be a chore, you might find it to be exciting, especially when you reach the Endless mode, which ramps up the difficulty in ways that leave you satisfyingly struggling to maintain a good offense, defense, and bonuses effects to stay alive. After you survive this initial challenge, the game truly starts to ramp up in difficulty, offering more exciting fast-paced experiences. But here's the real problem. There is no continuity between runs until you win the second time, since you're forced to drop everything and move on. I do believe that the developers should give us the option to just keep going on the first success. We'll stop when we want to stop, not when you tell us to. This puts a severe restriction on player motivation. I think offering the same amount of freedom found throughout the rest of the game would be a better option than throwing players back into the beginning where they had a really good run going. There's really no need for this forced 2-run rule because nothing changes, it genuinely kills the flow of gameplay and makes somebody more likely to rerun the same seed to get back to that excitement, which takes even more time that has already been wasted. The sound effects and music in this game go hard. Everything sounds fresh, fitting, new, and distinct. Swapping from a heavy metal soundtrack and suddenly shifting towards something more upbeat and jovial as you blast your way through the pine forest. It doesn't detract, it only keeps elevating the desire to keep pushing forward. Just listen to that baby purr. Now imagine equipping that weapon with all kinds of modifications. You know, the feature most games tend to make permanent, having to rush over to some blacksmith or a shop to destroy the weapons or extract each modification for a small sum of currency. But with Odinfall, no siree. You'll be dropping and swapping your gear and attachments regularly, offering insane amounts of customization and depth, the way it's meant to be done. The problem once again is that the initial build up to get to that point can be tedious. Personally, I absolutely love the Scorcher attached with 2 or 3 leech modifiers, and if you were lucky to find a primordial or ancient variant in the same run, you could further customize it to be wider, faster, and even more devastating, as you explode everything around you, splashing acid everywhere and healing insane amounts as enemies and shopkeepers alike grow bigger, stronger, and even more difficult as the nuclear timer ticks down. Which I can only assume caused damage over time. At some point, I couldn't pay attention since there was so much happening at the same time. Odinfall delivers plenty of thrilling action, but it's hindered by design choices that feel punishing, particularly in the earlier stages. And as I write this review, the developers are actively making adjustments to address many of the issues that I encountered during my experience, which is a very good thing to hear. The core story takes about 9 to 10 hours to complete, with an additional 10 or more hours of secret bosses, unlockable lore, and weapons to discover as you wait for more content to be released. The difficulty spikes, lack of continuity, and the reliance on one dominant build over others holds back what could otherwise be a fantastic experience. Once you've unlocked more abilities and weapons, Odinfall starts to shine. However, it could benefit from a more balanced approach through their introductory phase. It just doesn't feel like you're in control until you've played and unlocked the features and progression that opens exciting playstyles.